I'm now at the Gemeente Museum in The Hague, which as a child, before I was 25 years old, I probably visited this museum more than 50 times. And I showed art in this museum to my high school friends, even to my elementary school friends. The Gemeente Museum has the most impressive and the most fantastic Mondriaan collection in the entire world, largely work before 1920. This painting was bought very recently. It's unfinished, even though it looks finished. And this is not part of the original collection, by the way. This was bought later. There is a typical Mondriaan. And this is a very typical one. When you look at this one, if you know his evolution, I can tell you that it was made after 1932, but before 1938. His evolution is so strong that you can almost never be wrong. Let me see how wrong I am. 1937. Right, so I was on the ball. Yeah, I know Mondriaan. But this one is probably his 1944, shortly before he died. This looks very similar to Boogie Woogie, which we have in New York. So this is probably 1944. I could be off by 1 year. Yeah, it's the year that he died, 1944. Victory Boogie Woogie. I'll show you more Mondriaans than you've seen in your lifetime. Very famous Mondriaan. Apple tree. Probably made 1912, 1913. You see this is clearly influenced by Cubism. These are early Mondriaans. The beaches in the Netherlands. This is all work from prior to 1910. Look at this room, you will go bananas. Very famous one. My guess is 1909, plus or minus 1 year. Oh, this is my famous one. This is called The Red Cloud. Again, a few years before 1910. This one I do not immediately recognize as a Mondriaan, but of course it is a Mondriaan. And it's before 1910. Another Mondriaan, again prior to 1910. And here you see this very sort of religious-like work. My guess is again roughly 1910. Let me take a look. 1911, that's close enough. Early Mondriaan. Great one, flower. He did flowers almost his whole life before he became Mondriaan the way we know him. Probably 1910. Very typical one. very typical one. All these paintings were owned by a person whose name was Slijpers. And Slijpers has bought from him countless number of paintings, which he all donated to Gemeente Museum. But Slijpers, I think, stopped buying, maybe he died, I do not know, around 1920, when Mondriaan became the Mondriaan the way that you and I know him. So these are all early Mondriaans. This one definitely before 1910. This one definitely before 1910. I would never have guessed that this is a Mondriaan. This must be even earlier, probably before 1907. Okay, that is not a Mondriaan. So this is the famous red and blue chair, of which I have 2 copies. This has become so famous, this chair, that it's almost iconic for Mondriaan. So he was the inventor of what we now call neoplasticism, the godfather of the style movement. The Valance Chair, Valance stool, all his old furniture that was strongly influenced by Mondriaan, by the style movement, was made by Gerrit Rietveld. He also made the red-blue chair, and this is the Valance Chair. This is an original, you can tell, because it's worn. So this is Mondriaan the way we know him, neoplasticism. I can tell by the way he draws the black lines that this was painted 1921, plus or minus 1 year. Let's take a look. 1921. See, if you know him well, then it's amazing how accurate you can predict. Oh, look at this, look at this. Okay, this one, I can also tell by the lines, must also be 1921 plus or minus 1. And this one must also be 1921 plus or minus 1. That is sort of the end of the Slijpers collection. And this one is probably not. Let me see. That black line at the bottom there may indicate that it is a 21 plus or minus 1. But I wouldn't be surprised if it is later. Probably later. Let's take a look. It is 21. And that's because of this line, the way that this line is not completely drawn all the way to the end. And let's see, this one, 21. And I said 21 plus or minus 1. This is typical for that period, which was the invention of neoplasticism. And this one unmistakably, oh, you can even tell the 21 here. That's not a Mondriaan. But it's someone who worked with Mondriaan and who was strongly influenced by Mondriaan. And he will be one of my art quizzes. That's why I will not mention his name yet.
Yeah. This one.
Oh, okay. Now we see some stunning evolution in Mondriaan. It's early days. This is before neoplasticism was invented by him. This is typical for 1917 plus or minus 1. Also before neoplasticism, so these were all bought by the Slijpers, by Mr. Slijpers. Again, I would say 1918 plus or minus 1. Very shortly after this, he invented neoplasticism. This is also a Mondriaan. I told you I would show you more Mondriaans than you will ever see again in your lifetime. So in this room alone, this is not a Mondriaan, this is a Bart van der Lek. Also strongly influenced by the style movement. But if we go around in this room, that's a Mondriaan. That's a Mondriaan. That's a Mondriaan. That is not a Mondriaan. So that one is a Mondriaan. This is a Mondriaan. And this is a Mondriaan. And this is also a Mondriaan. Where on earth would you ever see so many Mondriaans in one room? So these last three that you've seen here were sort of his last phase before he invented suprematism. Sorry, neoplasticism, not suprematism. I'm confusing them with Malevich. Neoplasticism. So all these are around 1918, 1919. And he made the big breakthrough in 1920. And the big breakthroughs you see here on this wall. All three, it turns out, were made in 21, and I guessed 21 plus or minus 1. So this is not a Mondriaan. If you know his work well, you would immediately be able to tell. But again, it is the artist who was strongly influenced by his work, by the style movement. Perhaps you remember my talk about looking at 20th century art. No, sorry. Perhaps you remember my talks in which I explained why there are rainbows, why the skies are blue, and why clouds are red near sunsets. I've always regretted. I've given many lectures on the blue sky and red clouds and red sunsets. I've always regretted why I never showed this Mondriaan, which is called the Red Cloud. It's too late now, and I will never give another lecture on Rayleigh scattering. But this is the Red Cloud by Mondriaan. Terrific painting. 1907, maybe 1908. So you've seen this room. We'll go once more around. Victory Boogie Boogie. And here, this is not a Mondriaan. It is a painting by a friend of mine, Rob van Koningsbrugge. I bought one very large Rob van Koningsbrugge. Maybe about, I think about 1979. It's almost 40 years ago. It's in my bedroom in Cambridge. Rob van Koningsbrugge.